among those things that the First Amendment achieves is an elimination of prior restraints on speech. In fact, this wasn't even a controversy in England. The Blackstonian law that we inherited from England made it illegal to have a prior restraint like this. Well, here it is. The FDA is a massive prior restraint. So
how does the FDA get away with something like this? I'm unclear on that, because you talk about constitutional issues. Tell us what this whole idea of separation of powers is all about and how it plays into what you're talking about here.
Well, since 1935, the Congress of the United States has delegated to over 182 independent regulatory commissions a combination of legislative, executive, and judicial power. What this means is that you, as the Commissioner of the Food and Drug Administration, can create law by creating regulations, can enforce the law against those you accuse of violating it, and can judge the violation. So you are all-powerful in your sphere. Now, at the time of the founding of the Republic, one of the cornerstones of the American constitutional system is the notion of separation of powers. And James Madison, John Adams, Sam Adams, all of our founding fathers were committed to this notion that power, in order to avoid tyranny, power that is legislative, executive, and judicial has to be in separate power centers. Madison said that if ever any two of those three powers were co-located in a single person, that would be the very definition of tyranny, because the person could be the judge in the instance of the accusation.
And you're telling me now that the FDA and other regulatory agencies have all three?
Yes, they do. And so what has happened is that 3/4 of all laws made by the federal government are not made by our elected representatives, as the Constitution requires, but are enacted by unelected people who run the independent regulatory commission.
Well, surely, if I'm a congressman, I ought to be able to delegate that authority to the agency, yes?
Well, you have done it, but it's unconstitutional in the
Let's
sense
don't let a
of the
little
founding
thing like the Constitution get in our way. I'm talking about, I just say to them, you guys write the rules. Why would it be in my best interest as a congressman to do that, by the way?
Because you avoid responsibility and accountability for your actions. The great thing about doing that, if you're a member of Congress, and the reason why this happened, is that congressmen are constantly presented with controversial issues. And if they take a position, a strident position, on one side or the other of the controversial issue, they're going to alienate a significant part of the electorate. And they're going to risk re-election. And their objective is to constantly be re-elected, to make themselves permanent members of Congress. They love the jobs. And what happens is when they delegate this power away, they avoid making the tough choices, but they can take credit for the overall beneficial picture. For example, if I'm a member of Congress, I'll vote in favor of clean water or clean air, and I'll appropriate massive sums. But on the dirty business of shutting down the factories and putting people out of work, well, EPA will implement it with its regulations, and EPA will be responsible for that. And then, even though I voted for the appropriations bill, even though I delegated all this power to the agency, if a constituent writes to me and says, I'm upset with the EPA...
I'm going to write it, and I'm going to tell you that I'm mad about it, because I write my congressman, I'm mad about it. Now, they're going to represent me then, aren't they?
Well, you get the member of Congress who was initially responsible for delegating that power away, who understood by doing that he wasn't going to make the hard choices, who knows that the hard choices are causing you to be unemployed. And what does he do? You write me a letter, I'm a member of Congress, well, I'll either just send the letter to the agency, or I'll write a letter saying I'm upset about that. But it's of no legal consequence. The agency gets the letter, they say, oh, great, well, we'll respond to it in 4 months. And they don't do anything. Why? Because there's no power in this whole process. It's been delegated away. The governing power of the United States is in the hands of these unelected people, and they are making the laws. And this is a permanent government. This is an oligarchy, a bureaucratic oligarchy.
This is a major bureaucracy. Now, you were telling me a minute ago, I asked you how you beat these folks, and you were telling me about that. So get back to that before I go back to Dr. Simone with another question. Get back to that and how you beat them, and then did they do anything different?
Well, my clients brought me into this area, food and drug, and they said, look, we've got a big problem. We have all this science showing that nutrients affect disease, and we want the public to have it. But the FDA is preventing us from doing it. Absolutely. Even though we have the proof, they won't let us say it.
You can prove that prune juice will help constipation as an example.
But let me give you the real story. And the real story is folic acid. We had our clients saying, look, folic acid will reduce neural tube defect births by as much as 40%. Another branch of the government, the National Institutes of Health and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, were telling physicians that very same information, that you've got to recommend to your patients before women become pregnant to take at least 400 micrograms of folic acid or 800 micrograms to reduce their risk of a neural tube defect birth. Now, this is vital information, and our clients wanted to put it on their products that sold folic acid, and the FDA said no. And here you have a pediatrician, Dr. David Kessler, the commissioner of the FDA. He's a pediatrician. He's saying no to this to protect the drug industry from competition that would arise if truthful information reached the public about the treatment effects of a food element, folic acid. So to prevent that from happening, to protect the drug industry's monopoly on the right to communicate treatment information, he censored this vital information for 4